Hey everybody, welcome to Campus Comics Cast, coming to you from Carbondale, Illinois, with special guests from the Campus Comics crew. And now, here's your host, the man with the previews in hand, Mike No.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Campus Comics Cast, coming to you from inside Campus Comics on East Main Street in Carbondale, Illinois, as per usual. This is a little bonus episode. We're going to talk about several topics here. I'm Mike No, the owner-operator here at Campus Comics, and joining me for this roundtable discussion is
Scott Reed
and Dan Brown.
All right, and like we said, it's kind of a potpourri episode. Going to hit on some topics here. We're going to start off with the first one is what is most likely the final, well, next to last, the penultimate of the Marvel series on Netflix, and that is Punisher Season 2, which again stars John Bernthal as the titular character, Frank Castle, the Punisher, and a lot of returning characters from Season 1, and I know, Scott, this is one of your favorite characters.
Yes, absolutely one of my favorite characters, so I'm certain that my views on it are a little bit biased for that regards, as far as how much I liked it, probably compared to everybody else, but who knows.
Right. No, I think for me, from now on, whenever I think, it's kind of hard for me to separate Bernthal from this character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not you like the story of this episode, this season or not, and I think we're all pretty much in agreement that it wasn't as good as the first season.
No, it's not as good. And that's almost, it would be very difficult for them to have. I really feel like we got two really, really good seasons of Punisher with the second season of Daredevil plus the first season of the Punisher. So, kind of the third time they were bound to have a little bit of a drop-off, but I still really liked it, but it's just nowhere near as strong as the first season. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like I don't think it's bad, but it was a little more of a slog for me this time.
Yeah,
I think there's too much emphasis on the supporting characters and not enough on Frank overall.
Yeah, I think my big issue with the season was I felt like there were too many storylines, and I was like, how are they going to wrap all this together?
Right.
And then I felt like they really shortchanged some of the conclusions of some of the storylines just to get to the end. At one point. So,
spoilers.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, kind of starts out. I'm not really sure how long, what time has passed since season 1 in this.
I'm not sure.
They don't really. I'd say probably just a few months. Yeah, it's probably just a few months. You would probably say.
I mean,
they say a year at some point.
Okay, do they? Yeah,
because Madani has to recover.
Yeah, because
she shows back
Russo
up.
was in the coma for so long.
Right.
Later on in the season, they do say like a year ago this was happening or something. So
and then
but again, that's when the show's been going on for a little bit. So who knows what the time frame is there necessarily.
And this is obviously post Daredevil season 3 as well.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, so there's a pretty good time lapse there.
So we're not really sure what he's happened in the interim, but we just catch up with Frank at some point, a year or so down the road. Don't know what he's been doing in between, but he's kind of just
slacking.
Apparently, crime is running rampant. He's not doing anything about it. Yeah, but it just kind of catches up. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that I guess they're kind of saying that he, for a brief time, he was kind of living a normal life.
Yeah.
He wasn't the Punisher. He was. I guess he was Pete, or not. It was Pete.
Yeah,
Pete. That's
Pete
pretty
Castiglione.
bad. Castiglione.
Yeah. And as far as that goes, I kind of rolled my eyes at that at the beginning of the season, but by the end, I was okay with it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
With the Pete thing?
Well, just with the I'm having a normal life. I'm not committed to this. Like I think the Punisher typically should be.
Yeah.
Right.
I have the same problem with Dark Knight Rises with Batman. Like Batman just retired for 8 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Come
for
on.
Sure. Yeah. But not much of an obsession if you can do that.
Now, one thing that I think is weird about the Punisher compared to all the other Netflix series is like, these guys, they get in fights, they get beat up, and the next day their faces are all pretty again, except for the Punisher.
Yeah,
he gets like love tapped in the nose, and he has black eyes for the next 4 episodes.
It looks like Rough Road.
Yeah.
There is the scene that kind of bothered me was when they're breaking out of the hospital and he's dressed up in the cop's uniform. He gets pretty beat down, and then in the ambulance after it wrecks, he's fine and walking up, and he's recovered pretty quick from that.
Yeah.
But that's the only time I think that really happened in the season. But that one did kind of stand out because they've been so consistent with that. You know,
so bad.
They have the convenient recovery times.
Yeah.
You know?
Right, and he was able to drag, Mahoney
out,
yeah, all that stuff. So,
I tell you what, one thing that it took me I struggle with this. I don't know if struggle is really the right word, but in the first 2 episodes, we have Beth, who's the bartender. She's played by I have her name written down here someplace. Where did it go? I lost it. Alexa Davalos. I was like, I know her from someplace, and I couldn't place her. I had to go online and look it up, and it's like, oh yeah, duh, she was the main character in Man from High Castle, and it took me forever to figure that out. It's just like, I could not place her. No, it never came to me at all. Mm-hmm. And so if you were like me and wondering, that's where you might know her from. Mm-hmm. And I really thought it was odd that she was only in 2 episodes, right? Yeah. I have a theory about that. We'll talk about closer to the end.
But I definitely kept waiting for her to revisit that character, that arc. I kind of was expecting them to put a bow on that, and it didn't happen.
No.
Because it's basically he shows up at this bar, craziness ensues, he hooks up with this bartender because he kind of intercedes, helps her when somebody was messing with her, and then, nice moments with her and her son, and things like that, just to never revisit that. That was a little unsatisfying, I thought. Like to see a little bit more of that. And but part of the stuff that happens in the bar is, of course, he gets in this crazy fight with this teenage runaway. You're not sure what's going on with her, but kind of streetwise, kind of feels like she can take care of herself. Again, this actress, I think, I don't know her name. Wasn't she in that 13 Reasons Why or something? That Netflix thing,
that I don't know.
Something. I'm thinking that's from. Haven't watched that, but I'm thinking I'd read that's where she was from. But yeah, that kind of revolves around one of the main, parts of the story is him helping this girl, getting, developing some affection for, fatherly affection,
And that's basically what brings him back from this normal life that he had been, is that, he feels obligated to protect this girl. He started to protect her, and then now that he started it, he has to see it all the way to the end. And they even,
does he?
Well,
because
that's
how
true.
often does she lie to him?
Yeah.
And get them into deeper trouble than they were.
Well, and he even says during the course, if you'd been a guy, I wouldn't have helped you.
Yeah.
It kind of goes into that.
It's kind of his chivalrous.
A few episodes in, I'm like, is she ever going to be honest with him? Why doesn't he walk away from this?
At a certain point, all that. Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot of plot threads going on through all this. Not the least of which the actor that played John Pilgrim. I don't know. I don't know where I know him from, but just one of those faces that shows up.
He's not Dollar Store Mads Mikkelsen.
That's
the vibe I was getting by the end of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, one thing that I was surprised by, in these seasons now on Netflix, I've been like making a point to watch the recap and like trying to say, well, okay, what can I guess about what's going to happen this season based on what's in the recap? And I'm pretty sure we saw Microchip in the recap, and no Microchip this season. Which I was really surprised that they did not bring him back. I was actually a little disappointed they didn't bring him back.
I think it would elevate. I think it would have been.
It would have helped. It would have helped a lot. I think. Yeah,
that's a good point.
Random aside, episode 2 or episode 1, the name of the episode is Roadhouse Blues, and I could not think about Patrick Swayze in the movie Roadhouse the entire time I'm watching that first episode.
Right. So you're not really sure. Of course, it plays out. That's which is going to happen over 13 episodes to find out what the deal is, why they want this girl, and stuff, and the things. Kind of what this character, the John Pilgrim character that
played by Josh Stewart. That's his name. I still don't know what he did, but he's played by Josh Stewart. So if you know who Josh Stewart is,
so he's wasn't there a character called the Mennonite in the Punisher book? And I think that's who this is loosely based on. I don't think he had a name. I just think he went by the Mennonite. He was like a religious hitman,
yeah.
Which is this guy's story. I don't really know what happened, what his pre-story was much, unless I was nodding off and I didn't catch it, or why he ended up having the religious conversion or whatever, because obviously not a good guy,
right.
Before, and now he's super religious, and his wife's sick on her deathbed, basically.
They have 2 sons.
Who are being used against him to force him into coming after this girl.
Well, I think part of it is that he's convinced that, okay, so you have Corbin Burnson and I forgot her name.
Lana Lang.
Yeah.
From Superman 3.
Annette O'Toole, and they are kind of like and they don't, it's kind of surprising how underused they were in this for those two caliber of actors.
I mean, they're definitely behind the scenes characters. You can see that, they're obviously not on the front lines of this story, but you figure they'd have more involvement.
Yeah, and they'd have a little bit more face time.
With those actors.
Yeah, a little bit more face time. So, but, the Pilgrim is convinced that, what they're telling him to do is what he should be doing because he's basically trusting that they're using his skills appropriately, and they basically are a powerful religious couple who are setting their son up to become, who was a senator, to become the next president of the United States, and they learn about this scandal, which is how the young girl gets involved, where they have pictures of the son basically involved in a homosexual relationship, and of course with them being religious, they don't want that to come out because then it will kill his chances of, they feel it will kill his chances of becoming president. So they're trying to cover this up, and it's the girl somehow has these photos, which is what leads to the Pilgrim going after her, trying to kill her, and bringing in all these other storylines, which was one of the big issues for me on this season. Is it was just there were too many storylines and trying to bring it all together. It felt rushed. It was like drag, and then rushed to pull it all back in at the end.
And I'm not saying drag to the point of like Iron Fist or something.
No, nowhere near.
But this was more of a slog than I expected it to be, especially as much as I've liked the first season. And again, I feel like there's too much emphasis on the supporting characters, not enough on Frank's specific story.
I agree.
And there's there's cool action scenes, but like there were a couple times where I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it was just such a drag for me in some parts, but.
Yeah, because the whole thing again, of course, Russo shows back up.
Right.
He's been in coma, like Dan mentioned, for a long time, and Madani, who got shot
in the
head, she's going and seeing Russo every day.
So it's a bit of an obsession for her.
Right? Yeah. So on that whole thing, so it's kind of her story arc, Russo's story arc, the therapist story arc that's dealing with Russo.
I tell you what, I was really disappointed with that mask.
I know.
The whole Jigsaw thing, because I'm like, okay, he's going to take that mask off. It's going to be like super crazy. Like they probably can't afford to do this every episode, so they put that mask on him. And he takes off. I was like, he ain't that jacked up. That's not Jigsaw.
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing. I was expecting it to be a whole lot more than that. And because I mean, the actual character in the comic books is borderline ridiculous looking.
I
maybe shouldn't even say borderline. He's ridiculous
looking. Just stitched up all the way with a Popeye and just all kind. It's just a mess.
I mean, you can kind of understand it, because that was like in the first season. That was his thing. It's like as many times as he got shot and hurt, it never hurt his face.
I feel like they really should have played up his vanity more, though, in the first season to justify what they have done this season. Having said that, though, the scars there's some close-ups of them, and they look really good. Like it's well done makeup.
Yeah,
I feel like they should have just went farther with it, though.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty roughed up there looking at the end of the first season.
Dragging your face through a mirror will do that.
Exactly.
So then he's been in the coma this time. Obviously has some memory loss. He keeps having flashes and visions of this skull and can't figure out why. So he doesn't know. They have an encounter later because he kind of hooks up with this band of disenchanted vets, and starts robberies and all this stuff. So the first time he encounters Frank tries to kill him, and he doesn't know why.
He remembers Frank, but he remembers him as a friend, and not as the person whose life that he ruined. And you also have Russo during this time. He's talking to a psychiatrist, Krista Dumont, played by Floriana Lima, and I'm not familiar with her from anything, but you know what? Well, she's really the bad guy in this season. Yeah, she's the bad guy.
Playing both ends against the middle. She's playing everyone.
Yeah, and if you watch the Supergirl show on CW, she played Maggie Sawyer on there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right. Gotcha. And the young girl that we're talking about, her name is Amy Bendix in the show, is played by Georgia Wiggum, is what I have written down. So hopefully I have that correct. So those of you who know these actors and actresses from other places, there are their names. So
the other thing is just like I didn't. So Russo / Jigsaw wasn't as messed up as you thought, and I
Right.
just really don't know that I need sympathetic Jigsaw. You know what I mean?
No.
At some point, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You gotta. This guy's just, and I'm not saying he's not detestable, but it
Yeah,
just didn't work for me.
Yeah, you have go ahead.
You can't have the Punisher go up against sympathetic villains.
Right. That's
Because
true.
then he's a monster. You know what I mean? That's just the finality, that he deals out.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
we might as well
you
go
can't-
ahead and talk about that scene.
Yeah.
So at the
Yeah.
end, we get the resolution, where Russo's dying. I mean, and he knows he's dying. He calls
Curtis.
Yeah, I think he
Yeah.
calls Curtis. Curtis doesn't go. He sends Frank there.
Well,
so,
he tells Billy, "I will not call the cops."
yeah, okay, yeah.
He calls Frank Castle.
Yeah. So here, Frank walks into the room, and Russo starts talking, and he doesn't even finish one sentence, and Frank just shoots him, and that's it.
That's
it.
it.
It's just like there's
so
no,
good.
It was.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's no soliloquy, there's no reconciliation,
Frank.
there's no,
That's Castle.
there's no forgiveness, and while I thought that was the right thing to do, I was really surprised that they, as long as they dragged that out, that they wrapped that up so quick.
I'm so glad that I was having flashbacks to Luke Cage season 2, where I'm like, don't tell me he's getting away at the end of this.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay, yeah.
Don't tell me
Yeah,
he
for
escapes
sure.
and is on the run at the end of this. I would have been furious.
Yeah.
I was already iffy about them bringing back that character, to
Yeah.
begin with.
Yeah.
Especially because this is all we're, theoretically getting of this show.
Yeah, so, but even though Russo doesn't remember what he did to Frank, Frank remembers what
Yeah.
Russo did to him. So
Yeah, because that's the whole thing. Is like Frank gets back to New York, with the help of, Madani and all that stuff, and basically, the whole plot is just to get together and take out Russo.
Yeah.
and
That's-
so that's the whole plot, and then it kind of goes off the rails a little bit from time to time, and then Madani starts going to see this therapist who has developed her and Russo have developed a relationship, kind of twisted one.
yeah.
But basically, like Scott said, she's really the bad guy of this because she's the one that figures out how to take Frank out,
Yep.
how to mess him up and neutralize him.
And the one thing about that, when you're watching it, it's pretty obvious what actually happened,
Right.
and it's like the cops put no effort in trying to give a different
Investigate.
narrative or
Nope,
or
that's
anything.
Castle. He did it.
Yep.
It's so quick though too. Like
Yeah.
that's the next morning is when they're in the morgue.
Yeah.
For that scene.
Yes.
So it's like there hasn't even been time to run forensics on all this stuff and figure out what happened. Before they're down there trying to.
Yeah, they're
fix
not
this.
investigating as much as assuming that Castle did, that this is his fault.
And I would think that even Castle, after having seen it, would have realized. I think it would have been more obvious to him. You know what? Those probably aren't my bullets.
Yeah.
Well, he also has a face full of blood.
Yeah.
At that point, Scott, so I'll forgive
Yeah.
that a little bit. He's really in the moment.
Yeah.
In that scene, so I can understand that.
Yeah. One of the things that I had a lot of trouble with, and I don't know, I tried not to laugh because it's not really a laughing thing, but the point is how quickly there are these two fights that involve Madani. And one of them's Russo, and she handles him fairly easily.
Yeah.
However,
The psychiatrist
was really hard.
Psychiatrist is first. She's all pumped up with adrenaline for Russo at that point. You know what I mean?
I guess.
And that's kind of her goal. That's what she's been going for. Is him.
Oh, is
you know what I
Russo.
mean?
So you think the extra?
Yeah,
mercy
I'll give that a pass. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I guess she was also willing to use the gun on Russo and
Yeah.
didn't really use the gun on but
Yeah.
still, I thought that too. It's like that fight with the psychiatrist dragged on
Way
and on and
too
on.
long.
Yeah, and she doesn't dispatch Russo, but she holds her own a whole lot better against
Yeah.
Russo than she does against psychiatrist.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
as much as they're pushing that story, I'm like, Madani better not be the one that kills Jigsaw.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, don't give me that.
I was glad to see Madani back.
Oh, I was too.
Yeah,
I think she did
Amber
really good.
Rose Riva. I'm probably not saying her name correct. Billy Russo was played by Ben Barnes. We also got to see Turk again.
Yeah,
Rob
that was a
Morgan.
great-
Curtis came back. He's played by Jason R. Moore, and then
Brett
Brett Mahoney, Royce Johnson. So I was glad. And then we get Karen Page back as well, and I thought she did a good job. So I enjoyed having her back, better than seeing. Old night nurse. I got
Rosario.
Rosario Dawson.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they've kind of moved past her as the thread that holds all these together. So was happy for that. Let's think there's some
Final thoughts?
I loved the ending to this.
Oh, with them.
The sort of epilogue where it's, was it 3 months later or whatever,
Right.
where we see him take, like, he coordinated this meeting of these gangs.
Right.
And just goes in and blows them all away, wearing
Right.
the skull. Like, that's like the perfect ending
Oh, yeah.
to this.
Now, that's we mentioned before. I have an alternate theory. I think that if this series was going to get a third season, which none of us expect it is, and by the way, my estimate for whenever this is going to be canceled is February 18th.
Okay.
That's 1 month after it started. I'll
Start a pool?
Start a pool, an over/under pool for February
All right.
18th. All right, but I really think that they brought in the actress that played Beth. And if they were going to have a third season, then this would have ended with, instead of him going to that warehouse scene, it would have ended with him going back to the bar where she was working, and we got a happy ending to season 2, as opposed to the Punisher keeps doing what he's always been doing ending that we got. Now, I'm fine with the ending that we have, but I still can't believe they brought that actress in just for 2 episodes. I really think that when this was being filmed, they brought her in to be in season 3.
That.
Right.
And since they're not going to have a season 3, they changed what the final scene of this season actually was. Because I think they gave us the final scene for season 3 here at the end of season 2, knowing that they're not going to have a season 3.
Right.
My opinion, I'm probably wrong. I usually am, but
I mean, it's totally understandable because, like I said before, it just felt that arc was incomplete. It felt like kind of pointless.
Yeah.
If that wasn't the whole thing. I mean, it could have been any fight with him not getting involved with anybody.
he could have just been in
protecting her.
any random bar, and
Yeah.
that girl just showed up, and that's all we needed.
Yeah.
But instead, we got 2 episodes of Beth that we don't need because of how the rest of the season went.
I feel like, though, that works for me just in the fact that, like, he's walked away from that.
Yeah.
At the end of the season, he knows he's not going to have a normal life. This is what he does. This is what he's good at. This is what he enjoys on some level.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I mean, I see your point, but yeah, I can totally. It works for me in that way.
I just think because of how, like, if they wanted that character there for a third season that they're not going to have, so they change everything that they're going to do. So
Well, the showrunner, did say that he would like Vincent D'Onofrio to come on as Kingpin for the third season. I think it's cute. He thinks he's getting a third season.
Yeah, we'd all like that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be all for that. That'd be an amazing season, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think anybody expects it at this
No,
point.
not
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I will say that Arrow got renewed for season 8. Just throwing that out there.
Wow, 8 seasons.
yeah.
Oh my.
And of course, I guess the other thing is at the end, Frank does turn down a job with the military.
That's right.
So yeah, from Madani, because Madani moves into the
CIA,
military. Yeah.
Well, there was also a good story of that Ennis did with I think it was the Max line where Microchip tries to recruit him with the CIA. And that kind of doesn't work out for him. But I was kind of thinking about that story when that happened. Like, are they going to set that up?
But yeah, there were some good unexpected. There was a couple of jump moments, like Annette O'Toole's. I
there was like
not expecting
just
that,
boom, dead.
Boom, like off camera, boom, she's out. And the fact that once Frank found out that Pilgrim's kids were being used against him, they kind of joined forces.
Yeah, that's kind of like a
went
sort of surprise at the end.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, overall, I enjoyed it.
Yep.
It wasn't as strong as the first one.
No,
like we said.
well, that's tough to
Yeah.
tough to do. It was the first one was so good. So
for sure.
So I gave it a very fine minus, which is like 7.5, and that's probably maybe a little higher than it deserves, just because again I'm a Punisher fan. So I think after the first season of Punisher and the 3 Daredevils, I think this is better than all the rest of the Netflix stuff still.
Right.
So it moved into like spot number 5 on my list for the Netflix series.
I'd probably put it at fine. You know what I mean? Just because there was a lot of confusing a lot of threads that felt rushed. And some of those episodes were pretty sloggy. You know what I mean? Just a little bit sloggy.
Yeah, I'm going to go very good with it. It was just too weak in the middle. You know what I mean? The beginning was good. I loved the ending, but
in between,
I didn't need 13 episodes.
No.
I think is what it
for
came
sure.
down to. I think there's too much filler. I feel like we're getting, and this isn't accusation or anything of Barenthal. I think he's great, but I feel like we're getting diminishing returns with our Punisher shows here. I think Daredevil Season 2 is really strong. I don't think Punisher Season 1 is as good as that, and I don't think this season is as good as Punisher Season 1. I regret that they seem to want to play the long game with these shows, and now they're not getting it.
You know
what I mean? So I feel like that's going to hurt the final product. But again, there's no way they could have known that when they started. I'm sure they expected these shows to go on for 7-8 years, when they started, because on paper, why wouldn't they?
Right.
But it's just like, I think we're going to have just sort of not what we could have had.
Right.
Kind of when this is all said and done.
It's just
with
like
these
unexpectedly
shows.
they've got to wrap these up to some point or just leave you hanging.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically. So, no, I see exactly your point. So, all right. Well, the next thing I guess we just kind of want to mention and, have a few thoughts about is the fact that for the first time ever, a superhero movie has been nominated for a Best Picture Academy Award, and that is, of course, Black Panther was nominated for that. And what were you saying about initially there was a category?
Yeah, last year they were kind of floating around this idea of having can't remember exactly what they called it, but a popular movie category for the Oscars. AKA, we're trying to get people to watch this stuff. Yeah. Nobody cares about the movies we really nominate.
Right.
And Black Panther was an example they used for that, and I feel like there was backlash against that, like, well, why do you have to qualify these movies? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So they've done away with that, but Black Panther has stuck around in the Best Picture nominations.
Didn't they expand the Best Picture category? Because before it was always 5 movies, and there were maybe 9.
They've done that a few years ago. Okay. It gets up to 10, I think, every now and then.
Up to?
Yeah, I don't think they have to, but I think a couple years ago it did get up to 10. So it kind of fluctuates. It's kind of what they want to do, but again, it's called they want people to watch this ceremony now.
Right.
Yeah.
People to be a little more interested.
And again, we've had superhero movies win Academy Awards and stuff like that before, but nothing's been nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
I mean, it's for
visual effects or
stuff like
theme
that.
or even
but it's not about the movie itself.
Yeah.
It's technical achievement or whatever is what. So thoughts on? You think any chance whatsoever?
I don't think there's any chance at all that it'll actually win.
No, I don't. And that's a shame because it's a really good movie, and I feel like there's always if it does, there's always gonna be that asterisk next to it of well, they had that popular movie category they want to do, or it's just like a black movie or whatever. But it's still a good movie,
right?
You know what I mean? Is the thing, and I don't think. I think there'll always be that kind of question mark next to it.
Is it really the best movie?
Yeah.
Well, I love Black Panther, but I don't think it's the best superhero movie even. I still think, Winter Soldier is a better story, better written than what the Black Panther is. So, I mean, I just don't see it actually winning anything.
Right.
Plus, they're so... oddball with their Oscar picks anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, the last time a popular movie won was the last Lord of the Rings movie, and that was really probably more just we better acknowledge this series or something, and
that's probably foreshadowing the popular category. Yeah.
So I'd be thrilled if it won. That'd be great for a superhero movie. It'd be great for them. It'd be great for Marvel Studios. But
hey, in the month of February, combination of Black Appreciation Month, the Oscar nomination, they are having they're bringing it back to theaters for a week to AMC theaters. So I haven't looked to see if Carbondale or Marion or any place in the area is actually getting it for that week. But you might want to check. And
your
see if this,
listings.
Whatever. Check online. Of course, if it's the first week of February, this probably won't be out before before it actually hits the theaters. But be sure and check if you are hearing this. So.
All right.
So, do you think Endgame gets nominated next year for
No.
Best Picture?
No.
What?
No.
Probably not. So, okay. The next category we do want to talk about just briefly is one of the living legends of the comic book industry as far as art-wise and everything is retiring from comics as Mr. George Perez. Probably, best known for New Teen Titans, and you think Crisis on
Crisis,
Earth,
lots and lots of stuff.
lots and lots of
Avengers.
stuff. Yeah.
I mean, Infinity Gauntlet for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
You know, so.
That's right. I mean, I just know his art. I mean, just some of those covers that he did that you can look through and just like, I can't imagine another character that's not in there. You know, those
Right.
expansive cast
Well,
characters.
look at his JLA Avengers work.
Yeah.
That book is crazy.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? It's like every character who's been in the Justice League or an Avenger is in that book at some point.
Right.
You know?
Right. And from what I hear, I mean, I've never had the honor to meet him of either of you.
Yes, he was at Metropolis a few years ago,
Okay.
and I was actually able to get a sketch from him and speak to me. The only thing I was disappointed is because I was there ready to drop some money and maybe get in like a commission that he'd work on for a little bit, and he just wasn't doing that even at that time. It was just little quick sketches, and that was all you could actually get out of him. Super nice guy and very, very popular because most of the time down at Metropolis when they have guest artists in, you can walk straight up to their table, and there were lines for an hour or more when George Perez was there, however many years ago that was.
Yeah.
He draws people to conventions because of his popularity. So.
Yeah, I met him at Metropolis that year, and then at a Wizard World in Chicago too. I met him. Super nice both times. You know what I mean? Long lines both times. You know what I mean? So
the Hawaiian shirts.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that I think his wife makes, right? Something like that. I think they even have some of the material like custom made, all that stuff to do all that stuff. So I think I saw that because I know there was an episode of that Kevin Smith's show that Comic Book Men, where Mike Zapsik had lost all of his collection in one of the hurricanes.
Oh, yeah.
Had lost everything of that. So the other guys at the store commissioned George Perez to do a piece for him. I forget who it was.
I think it was Wonder Man, wasn't it? Because I think he's a big Wonder Man fan.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But it's like the green and red suit Wonder
Yeah,
Man.
yeah. And he actually came on the show and presented it to Mike and everything like that.
That must have been in the last season of that show because I don't remember that episode.
Oh, yeah.
So.
No, I think it was a couple.
It was a while ago because I haven't
years.
seen it. I haven't seen the last few seasons.
Yeah.
Of it, I know.
Okay.
So
Maybe it's
it was
one of the
a while
last two.
back.
So okay.
But yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool that, that kind of thing. So yeah, just that's my closest I've ever seen him. It was him on that show. It just seemed like a really nice guy.
Yeah, no, and he said he's still got to do some conventions and stuff like that.
Okay.
He has there was one or two on the list that he said he's still going to attend. I think there's one in Florida. Was it Mega?
Maybe.
And it sounded there was another one which was not in that vicinity that he considered like his his personal conventions or whatever, and I got the feeling that he was going to continue to show up for those even into the future, but probably just not doing commissions, just maybe doing autographs, but not any commissions.
I think I read, I don't know if it was a press release or whatever, but he said he'll still be signing stuff. He will still be doing some commissions, but it's a very strict set of rules, and it's not at conventions. You have to meet him at the convention and pick it up kind of thing.
I see.
You know,
so it's a...
It's a shame,
but he basically said, vision issues and some health issues that he's had, he just can't keep up with that pace anymore. And
again, with his level of detail,
exactly.
And again, if he wants to do something, I'm sure the door's open. I
can't imagine.
Even when he had the exclusive contract with CrossGen, they were like, "Yeah, you can go do JLA Avengers."
Yeah,
that was in his contract. So it's I can't imagine anyone turning down George Perez.
No.
Even if you want to work on a standalone thing at his own pace.
Imagine. Yeah, he's probably at that point in his career where he can pretty much write his own ticket for whatever he wants to do.
He's been at that point for a while.
I
remember.
That's what I mean.
When was it? Around the time that the first Teen Titans cartoon was out, and there was a video game coming out. He said in an interview, "Yeah, I'm set for life because I can retire right now because of Teen Titans." He's like, and now there's a game coming out. You know what I mean? So they get a cut of that. Him and Mark Wolfman. So he's pretty much set.
He, hopefully he's thanking, Kirby and Adams for that.
Yeah, for thinking that way. For sure.
But yeah, I think there's a real case to be made for him being the best, modern artist, in comics. You know what I mean?
He's definitely in the discussion.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would call him the best, but he's definitely in the discussion.
Yeah.
So. A lot of iconic stuff. For sure. So So, but he is for sure. He's just done with comics work at this point.
So I am happy to have that little quick sketch of Captain
bet you
America that
are.
I got from him because I probably won't get another chance.
Yeah.
So, yep.
For sure. For sure. All right. So, again, next topic here is everybody done with talking about Mr. Perez?
One more thing. My first comic book that I ever bought, George Perez cover.
Oh, nice.
What was it?
Avengers 184. Absorbing Man, a lot of like 6 or 7 Avengers, giant absorbing man.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yep. There you go. Yep.
All right. Well, just want to briefly talk about something that's been in the news of the comic book world that I don't think anybody really understands the ramifications. No. But again, we can theorize wildly or just talk about it, And that's obviously a huge shakeup going on at DC Comics, which of course, as we all know, is a subsidiary of Warner Brothers. And like I said, we don't really know what's prompted this, but what they say, like, was it 9% of the workforce, or which
it was 3% of the workforce, which at DC amounts to 7 people.
7 people. Yeah, I knew it was. So it's not a huge company,
Right.
meaning DC. Warner Brothers is.
It's important for those 7 people, though. For
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as far as we know, none of the major players like DiDio or Jim Lee or any of those
that's
guys.
always the rumor that pops up online when these announcements come out, and it never is true.
Right.
It's always people's crazy speculation or people have an axe to grind against these people.
Uh-huh.
The big loss here, though, is Mark Chiarello,
Right.
who worked for the company for like 25 years, and he spearheaded Batman Black and White, New Frontier, the Wednesday comics that they did a few years back, all these kind of big artsy sort of projects that they've done. Solo was his thing, too, that anthology series they did years ago. A lot of really good quality stuff, that like they're still making. On our last episode, we just talked about Batman Black and White statues. They've been cranking those out for years. That all comes from that miniseries. And so it's like, I think there's a big reaction to this online of them letting him go just because of like how important he's been to the company for so long.
Right.
And then what does that mean for the company going forward?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just.
And that's one guy.
Yeah. That's one guy. But I know, too, the thing that's questionable to me is, being a statue collector and more of a collectibles guy, from that, is the actual fate of DC Collectibles. Because we don't really know what that means. They got a lot of stuff in the pipeline that hopefully is not going to, be disturbed. But I do know that they moved it. I don't believe... Hopefully I'm not misspeaking, but the way I understood it is it's not DC Collectibles has kind of been moved out from the DC umbrella and out to just under a division of Warner Brothers. Because there's always talk of something happening there. Because if you look at what the competition Marvel does, when they produce collectibles, they simply sell licenses to companies that produce their stuff, whereas this is DC developing and producing their own, stuff in-house. Well, that's taken care of. So hopefully all the projects they have in the pipeline that I'm looking forward to and other collectors are looking forward to, those are still in the works. It'll just be handled differently. I do know... I forgot where I was going to go, so you guys take off. I'll think of it in a minute.
Right.
Well, I guess like the one big name that they said was going to be moved was like Bob Harris. Was that right?
Oh, was it?
Yeah. So I mean, he's still there and he's taken over some of those duties, and he's had like a history with DC for a while.
Okay.
The thing that I think surprises me the most is like, and we were trying to find like the rankings of the top books and previews this month, and realized that they just seem to have disappeared. But the last time that I was looking at those, like DC was 6 or 8 of the top 10 every single month. So if they're having issues financially, it's like I can't imagine what Marvel's thinking.
Right.
And I think one of you guys had mentioned that it's probably more of a Warner Brothers thing than a DC thing. Are they just expecting more out of the properties, or?
Well, I mean, that's always been my theory about the New 52. The way it just changed so suddenly and was so haphazard when they spend years working on some of these stories and big crossovers. How well coordinated everything is, and just how fly by the seat of their pants the New 52 launch was.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I don't know if anyone's spoken on this in official capacity, probably not. But that was Warner Brothers coming in and saying, you have to make these numbers, you have to do this and this. Marvel does this, why aren't we seeing these kind of returns?
Right.
And again, it'll be years before we ever get, the true stories about that because people don't want to endanger their job.
Yeah, until somebody leaves and it's willing to talk about. Not under an NDA or something like that.
Right.
So. Fine with burning a bridge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or who knows?
Well, they may have, some of these guys may have severance packages, and part of their package is like, you can't talk about.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. You can't go on the record about anything. Yeah. So,
what kind of stood out for me with all this, too, is in their original press release, also said that they are committed to publishing. And I'm like, who was talking about that?
Yeah.
When was that part of the conversation? Like, you better be
committed to publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Didn't they also, we were committed to publishing and the direct market?
Yeah.
So, okay. See,
it's
this is what, we've been talking about.
The direct market's been committed to you for 40 years.
Yeah, that's kind of our thing.
And they're committed to the direct market, and then what do? They are going to launch more books and now in Target. So they're adding Target to the discussion.
And I just feel like this is probably, I'm not saying full on, but I just feel like maybe there's a little bit of pressure from Warner Brothers to get these numbers and these profits, up and everything. Yeah. So is this an orchestrated push to get comics back out into mass market and out of specialty retailers? I don't know. You know what I mean? So it's just like, because there's more Walmart exclusive books. They're doing this, the Target exclusive books, which you just told me is going to be all original new content.
I've heard it's all original content.
The Primal Age special that they did is because it's the characters of that toy line, so there's no pre-existing material on that. So that is all new. And there's a lot of DC veterans working on that book, too, that one shot they did.
Right.
And it's $10.
$10,
as opposed to the $5 at Walmart.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know.
This seems, and then timing really, really seems weird. I mean, because DC, what they should be seeing is that, okay, if we can have a train wreck of a movie like Aquaman make $1 billion,
right?
Then by golly,
be golden at this point.
They should be able to. If they could come up with a quality movie, there's no telling how much money that should, that should make. Of course, I think they've had some much better movies before that didn't rake in the money that Aquaman did. So I don't know that they shouldn't be scrambling to cut costs at DC. They should be what can we give you so that we can get the next one of these things out.
That was also the thing for so long with DC was because they were under the umbrella was they could publish stuff that didn't turn a profit.
Right.
And it's all long term. It's all seen as development. Well, sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they could do these special projects, and things like that.
Well, I mean, and then you look at that, and then the reaction and what's happened in the aftermath of Batman Damned with Black Label. You know what I mean? It's just like it's just like Warner Brothers is really starting to step in and flex the corporate muscles and make sure that this errant child that they have, stays in line. I don't know what all's going on. There's no way we can know.
And today I was just seeing where Disney said they're committed to making R-rated Deadpool movies.
Really?
So it's like, what happened here? You know what I mean?
What is going on? And they're going to put the Disney name on
Deadpool?
No,
they're not. It will not. No. But there will be more. They've said, but it won't be. It won't be Disney before it.
Yeah, I was going to say. So anyway, again, wild speculation, but it's just something's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, the shakeup happened. We don't know how far it's going to go or what else is going to happen, but something's happening over there.
And again, we don't have any inside information here.
Oh, absolutely.
To what's going on. But just what I could figure out, I kind of did some numbers on the Walmart books. And at minimum, they have to be making $100,000 a month off those books, and that's if they're making $1 per issue, which it's probably more, but who knows? Because Walmart dictates,
right?
But just with the amount of stores there are in the U.S. and then how many copies they're getting approximately every month, the minimum is $100,000 they would be making off these books every month.
You're talking about gross across all stores, $100,000 a month, just.
And that's conservatively, you know what I mean? And again, not just kind of seeing what I can find online and different things.
Right.
So it's that's a moneymaker for them, and it's mostly reprint material.
It's probably a moneymaker that at little cost.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, do we know that they're actually selling those issues? Because, I mean...
They're in stores. Walmart's buying them.
But can Walmart return them?
I don't know.
I bet you they're handled by a vendor. I bet you the vendor comes in and swaps it out.
Okay.
Pulls those books out.
Because you would think they'd be turning up somewhere if they were returning them. They're, I can't see them just clogging up a warehouse.
Yeah,
or
with these things.
Who knows, just destroying them or whatever. But who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, who knows?
They're not. You don't think they're
But
ripping the
again-
front covers off of them?
But again, but again, that I mean, I'll take $100,000 a month, but in
Yeah.
the scope of, I mean, I know local Walmarts are $1 million a month stores, you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
stuff like that, and then Warner Brothers is, so $100,000 is probably negligible at some point, so, but it's obviously working and they're happy with it because they're expanding it.
They're adding more
Again.
titles.
Yeah,
You know what I
they're
mean?
expanding it, so they're seeing something, but it's all something that us local guys aren't.
Right.
So anyway, all right. Well, after talking about that, you guys have anything else to say about that? Don't want to rush you on, but
Yeah.
the final thing we want to talk about is, as much as we did last year with the 80th anniversary of Action Comics #1 and Superman, this year, 2019, is the 80th anniversary of their other fairly popular character, Batman.
More popular.
Yeah, so actually, yes, I would say Superman might be the corporate mascot, and everything, but Batman is by far the more popular character.
At least since the late 80s.
Yeah,
for sure.
right, yes.
Maybe pre-80, what was it, 89 when the first Batman movie came, or the Michael Keaton Batman
right,
movie
89.
came out. That's kind of when things changed a little bit.
Yeah.
But whatever year that was. So
1989.
Okay, it was 89. All right.
You are correct. So, we are gonna, for the next couple episodes, the non-previews episodes, we're all gonna talk about a Batman story, to recommend, or just one that we think is important to the character, or whatever. So, Scott, you wanna start us out?
Yeah, I'll probably have the shortest of these. I don't know. So I had to go through. It's like, to me, like, the stories that I want to recommend are things that like have pretty fond memory of, and I like enough that I kept a copy around. To just I want to own it, want to have it sitting on the shelf, be able to show it to somebody else. So for me, what really jump started Batman back for me was Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. So you get kind of a futuristic take on the character. His conflicts with Superman, the different ideologies. Plus, you just got Frank Miller, writing and drawing. I don't know what we can say about this one that hasn't pretty much already been said before. This is a story we've talked about periodically from in different episodes, and how much it means to the character, and then and it kind of led into other stories, which I'm not going to step on Mike here on his choice for where this kind of went after Dark Knight Returns. But like, I even have this old leather-bound complete Frank Miller that I've had sitting on the shelf for, gosh, I bought this new, and I don't know what copyright year this is, and this is from 1986. So I've had this around for quite a while. So it really changed the
So you bought
changed
that off the
face.
shelf?
I think I got it as a Christmas gift
okay.
one year. So around that time, 86, 87. So I've owned this book for. Oh, actually, I take that back. It was not that late. 89.
Okay.
Because it's reprinting from stories from 80, 86, and 87. So this is actually from 1989, and right around the time of Batman 89 pops out. So it helped revitalize that character. So
Absolutely.
it's something that if you haven't read, it's an evergreen story from DC. And I have a soft spot for Frank Miller as well. A lot of the work that he's done in DC and Marvel. So
So he came up. That's pretty much fresh on the heels of his Daredevil run, right?
Yeah,
when did
because
Dark Knight Returns.
it was at the so he was basically done with Daredevil. I think at that point, it was probably between the end of his first run on Daredevil and before Born Again would be my guess. I don't remember exactly what year Born Again was. Maybe Mike Atchison will chime in and tell us when when that was compared to those. Well, he'd be more the DC side of it, but. And I enjoy the artwork, enjoy the portrayal of the characters. You get the the female Robin, so just a little bit different take on an older and partly retired, coming out of retirement Dark Knight. So.
Right, and it really did set the. It was kind of a what do you call it? A watershed, for that character, because that's the thing that we can't imagine. Here we are. whatever that would be, 30 years after, 30
Yeah,
something
30
years
years,
after
yeah.
release of Dark Knight Returns. We can't imagine, that even within the context of the relatively small sales numbers of comic book publishing, that Batman was a struggling title.
Yeah.
Which it was.
It was borderline cancellation.
Yeah. Right. And this is the story that brought that back and really set the tone in many ways for almost everything that's happened since.
Oh, yeah.
It took Batman, because initially back in 39 and those early years, Batman was a dark, gritty title. And then 60s, brought the lighter and the goofier, Silver Age stuff. But this is what took him back to his roots. But he did that by, moving it forward in time, when he's retired and then things have changed. So if you have not read it, really, you should have any interest whatsoever in Batman, you really should.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, how many times have you heard someone say, "This is what got me into comics. This is what got me back into comics."
Yeah,
it's like you still hear that.
Were there Elseworlds books before this story?
There had been imaginary stories and that kind of thing.
Yeah, they've been imaginary, but there never been kind of the Elseworlds.
No. And
I feel like this almost led into that whole Elseworlds.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think
possibility of telling different stories.
Gotham by Gaslight. I think it's the first sort of unofficial
Elseworlds.
Yeah.
But yeah, they wouldn't have done that book without Dark Knight
Returns.
Tell something different.
And its success, it saw multiple printings. And,
oh my gosh!
And
it still sells.
It still sells. And
there's a cartoon of it.
Yeah.
You can watch. That's influenced pretty much every Batman movie since it came out. Tim Burton mentioned it, when he made Batman, back in 88, 89,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm going to jump in with my entry in this just because Dan tends to be he's the resident Batman guy here, so he always digs a little deeper than what we do, because I'm going with the next obvious choice, which was Frank Miller's second story in Batman, which was Year One. It actually was part of his contract with being able to do that was to tell a revamped origin story of Batman. And so this actually was printed in issues, I think, I have my notes here, 404 through 407 of the actual Batman ongoing title was year one.
That's one of the things I've always liked about Year One, too, is that if they were making that now, it would be a standalone series
absolutely.
or mini-series, but it is in the main title. It is continuity, at that point.
Right. And like we just said, the Dark Knight Returns really marks a demarcation in the whole character between the previous stuff and the modern age stuff. And to the point where kind of they considered that a break point, and Wolfman was editor-in-chief, I think, and Denny O'Neil was editor of the Batman books at that time. And they totally envisioned what became Year One to be the first issues of Volume 2 of Batman. But then what Frank Miller came along and said, well, I haven't really destroyed anything that happened before. You know what I mean? So let's just not redo the continuity. So that's how they kept the original numbering and everything. But it really is what sets this story apart to me, and I think in general, is it's the first time that we really... I think the origin story of Batman was just a couple of pages.
Yep.
Just a couple of pages. I think it was like 2 pages, 12 panels, or something ridiculously low like that. It showed Bruce's parents getting killed and standing over the bodies, this and that. And that happened back in, I think, Detective 33. Yeah. So just a few issues in. So this is the first time we've really looked at that origin story more in depth. Of him actually becoming Batman. It's just like he sees his parents killed, he grows up, he becomes Batman. Well, this kind of picks up, and we only see the death of his parents and everything through flashbacks. But, the story actually starts, it's kind of an interesting story, too, it's not just Batman. It's like at the same time Bruce is coming back to Gotham, Jim Gordon's transferred to Gotham from Chicago. So we kind of see their Gotham City careers, to speak. Jim is a policeman, Batman or Bruce is a vigilante, kind of rise together, it kind of, and I think Gordon was always commissioner, like that in all the original stories. So here we see his rise through the ranks of, the Gotham City Police Department to become captain, and then if these future become the commissioner. So just that approach to it, and so many of the tropes that are still used in Batman stories up to and including like Gotham, where Gordon's fighting corruption, you know what I mean? These are all things that started in this
the
continuity.
Christopher Nolan Batman films
Absolutely.
relied on it heavily.
Yeah, exactly. Especially Batman Begins, when you see, Bruce just in the black with the ski mask and all that stuff, and getting, so you see a lot of that early stuff that's still used in different media today, and see him tweaking the suit. He gets out and gets messed up because the suit's too big and bulky, so he goes through all this stuff. So it just takes that bare bones, the bare bones, origin story we saw, and really expands on that. So the one thing that does differentiate this from, other than the subject matter from Dark Knight's Returns, is Frank Miller wrote year one, but he didn't draw it.
Right.
He didn't do the art. That was Dave Mazzucchelli, and I think I believe his wife did the colors, and then I think she colored it and stuff. So it was like the art was not handled by Frank Miller. So really, we see the introduction of Harvey Dent in this storyline as not his introduction, but as an ally pre becoming Two-Face and everything else. So just so many of the things, especially in Batman Begins and other stuff like that, just depend so much to this story.
Yeah.
And pretty much the stories that are being told today.
Yeah,
These
pretty
are all
much
things.
Batman continuity sense
Yes.
owes a lot to this story.
Yeah, just to that. So
And that's what I think separates, and that's why I think I like Frank Miller so much as a writer. And it's kind of like what Tom King's doing with the character now, is he is not, getting rid of anything in the past for that character. It's just like, it's all there, and let's just, let's keep it there, but just kind of, expand on that origin story. And it's a really, really good origin story. And even like Selena Kyle, I mean, she gets kind of introduced. So we've written all those characters, introduced quote unquote at the same time, where they're all in Gotham in their own situations. So.
So that's my recommendation. So, Mr. Brown.
I want to talk about a story called Mask, which is from which is from the first volume of Legends of the Dark Knight, and this will be issues 39 and 40.
And that is an overlooked series, I think.
And I think
Very
think this is such an overlooked story. For I'm glad we're talking about this the same time we're talking about Dark Knight Returns in year one, because I feel like this is almost up there with those stories. I feel like this is a great story. It's just been overlooked for a long time. It's only 2 issues, so it's the shortest story we're going to talk about. But it's like, I know they did some trades of Legends of the Dark Knight back in the day, but I know this isn't in print now. It's been out of print for a long time, and it's a shame because I think it's a great story. So this is written and drawn by Brian Talbot. And the stories, I'm going to go into the sort of more of a synopsis of this because I know people aren't as familiar with this, especially as they are with Dark Knight Returns in year one. But so the story sort of starts out with Batman on patrol at night, and he sees some guys robbing, like, I think it's a business or like a storage shed kind of thing. And, he dispatches them pretty quickly. A cop shows up. And Batman starts feeling lightheaded. He feels sick, so he kind of wanders off and lets the police, handle the criminals. He starts hallucinating. He passes out in the alley. He wakes up in a hospital, and they're like, "Oh, here you are again, Wayne." He's not Batman. He's a delusional homeless man who thinks he's Batman. And who has coped with reality by creating this delusion that he's a rich vigilante. And he looks in the mirror, and it's not him. He has no muscle tone. He's an alcoholic. They are pumping him full of medication. The kicker is, eventually this therapist comes in and starts talking to him, brings in his costume. It's assembled rags and trash bags into a Batman costume. And I love that suit. But this is just such a... He's looking at himself. He knows this is him. He even says, like, if this were makeup, I would feel it. I would smell it. I know what this is. Why am I so weak? He has no muscle mass on him. He's bedridden, basically. And it's this whole thing of, like, what is going on? Is this reality? They mention, there's this sort of, this is only 2 issues, so everything moves along pretty quick in this story. But there is a reference to when your parents were killed, like that all happened, but they had major debts and you were left with nothing, and now you're homeless. Now you're an alcoholic out on the streets who has these fantasies and attacks people and ends up in the hospital. And The doctor at the beginning is even like, oh, here we are again, and tells the nurse, you should know what to do with him by now, and all this. And so the story kind of flashes between these real sort of cinematic fluid panels, and then when he snaps back to the reality of the hospital, it's the very strict 9-panel grid, which is really effective in this story. Brian Talbot makes a really good use of that. There's a part where the therapist comes and talks to him, and they just start moving in closer and closer onto the therapist's face, and it just starts to become like, okay, maybe this is reality. Maybe he is crazy. It's this whole thing. And then he hallucinates that he attacks the doctor, and he sees the doctor's wearing a mask. He rips the mask off. It's Joker. He's like, oh, I knew it. And then he blacks out. And then he's back at the hospital. And, like, this one night, Catwoman comes to him and talks to him. And she tells him, believe in yourself. I came to say goodbye. And, like, she cries and leaves a tear on his face. He wakes up. The tear's still there. And he's like, what is this? Like, this is real. And so finally he does the Batman move of, I'm getting out of here. And he snaps off his restraints off the bed, throws on the suit, and jumps out the window. And he's falling, and he's wearing garbage bags. And that's the cliffhanger to the first issue here. The second issue opens with him still falling in the garbage bags. And there's a reference to, this is going to end like a movie serial where a hero gets thrown out the window and falls forever and lands on the fire escape. That's a direct reference to the first Batman serial where that literally happened. That was one of the cliffhangers to one of the 40s Batman serials. But then again, he wakes up and he's back in the hospital. But there's this whole sequence of this sort of dystopian Gotham, and it's like there's a newspaper saying Batman missing. So it's like, is it? But then he's walking through this crazy future of a Gotham without Batman that's just like a nightmare. And the mutants from Dark Knight Returns are there. Okay. The mutant gang is wandering the streets. Penguin and these other criminals have kind of taken over the city. It's just, this real sort of crazy thing. And then he sees a group of people attacking his mother. Much better Martha moment here than Batman Superman. Right. But he goes crazy, and it gets pretty violent when some of these fights with Batman beating up these thugs and things like that throughout. So, but it adds to the story. And it's just, eventually he ends up on police headquarters. The bat signal's up. Gordon, with broken glasses, says, this is it. We're tired of this. And the police just unload on him. And then it's like, again, now he wakes up in his bed in the mansion. And Alfred's there. And he's like, oh, whatever. You've always been spoiled. You know what I mean? Whatever. Come into the light. Pick one of these doors. You're not going to listen to me anyway. It's this real crazy thing. Cut to, he wakes up now in the hospital. The hospital's on fire. He gets out. Here's the therapist, who is the villain of the story, who has drugged him, kept him sedated for weeks so he could lose all this muscle mass, get him on these drugs. And the nurse that was helping him was also Catwoman. There's a lot of Easter eggs here at the end of the story. We have to kind of look around to see what's happened, where we have several masks. There's a Joker mask, there's a Catwoman outfit, there's all these other people that were in the hospital. It's only been the two of them. It's been this therapist, doctor, and then this nurse who he hired to do this, basically, and help him destroy Batman. And so it's like, who is this guy? This isn't some pre-existing villain. This isn't, the Riddler or something. This is a guy who his dad was tied up with the mob. Batman busted him, and then the mob ended up killing him. So in his mind, Batman's responsible for his dad being dead. And so he has coordinated this giant scheme, to break the Batman. And again, this is 92. This is basically right before Bane and right before Nightfall and stuff like that. So we hadn't really had that kind of story to this degree before. And it's, I think this story's really overlooked. I read this again last night getting prepared for this, and I was just so thrilled to read this story again. It's so good. I kind of wish Brian Talbot would have come back and done something else, too. Not even necessarily a sequel to this, but just something. Because this was so good. And then at the end, the hospital burns, and he just kind of lets it, grabs his real suit, and walks out. Wow. So, yeah, just a great story. And again, I don't know why this never gets brought up, but there's some other stories from Legends of the Dark Knight like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the one thing about that series overall, like early on, they were almost always like 5-issue arcs, and then later on they started getting to some one shots and some 2-issue things. But it's almost like there was one of the first things that was really like before people were writing for trades.
Yeah,
they were writing for trades, because they would just turn people loose, and have a multi-part story, and they tell their story, and then they go on to the next creative team. And
explain to me why the Two-Face story was 3 parts, though. Yeah, that story they did. That's always irked
me. One thing I want to mention, I'm gonna speak on behalf of Michael Atchison here. I just know because not that this is necessarily his favorite Batman story, but I know I believe this is a story that he really, really likes. This is from Batman Annual number 8, and he brought this up last year when Trevor Von Eden was at the Sluky Comic Con. When we got to interview Trevor Von Eden, and he just really liked the story. It's a Ra's al Ghul story, really, really solid. And I had picked up a copy and read it just on the fact that Mike had liked it so much. So kind of what we're going to do is we're just going to give this issue away to anybody who's listening. So basically, you just need to go to the Campus Comic Facebook page and just post Atch Attack, ATCH Attack, and you want to do the first person who does it, or you want to do anybody who does it, and then they'll draw a winner, or
let's just do the first person.
Okay, so the first person who posts Atch Attack to the to the Campus Comics Facebook page, you reserve this copy for yourself, and it's not in terrible shape, so it's definitely completely readable.
Sure,
and my nice, it's a free comic book,
Right there, you go.
And
so just post it anywhere on the page, or whenever we announce the. We won't know about this till you get this one up, though. Right?
Yeah, it'll be sometime. It'll probably be let's see, what is today? Probably be around the 14th that this one will be posted.
All right. So, So I will put on there whenever this episode is up. I will put a post on the Facebook page that this episode is up, and whenever you listen to it and you hear that, just post in the comments to that announcement. Atch Attack, as Scott said, and if the first person to do that will get this book, we'll get that to you, or you can come in the store.
Yeah, you need to come to the store and get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He'll hold it for you for a few days. You just need to come to the store and get it.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for contributing the book there, Scott. And I know this was also the book that Trevor Von Eden did say is the favorite thing that he had ever done. That Trevor Von Eden said this is the thing he's proudest of, that he feels like defines him as an artist, as a comic book creator. So
yeah, and it's the art is very stylized. I guess is how I'll put it. It's not a traditional looking Batman on a lot of the panels. So
all right. Well, thank you again. Let's give this book away.
There you go. Yeah. And don't assume somebody else has it. Go get it.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So I guess that do it for this one, guys?
I think so.
All right. Well, sounds good. Well, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you agree or disagree with any of our opinions, we would love to hear about it, just through message, or come in and have a discussion with Dan and myself on Saturdays. As he said, most Saturdays he's here. Or let's just talk about these things, and just come into the store at A16B East Main Street. You can call us at 618-457-6011. Reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter at campus_comics. At Twitter, I guess that's my info again. So
Scott Reed, burgcomics.com, BURG. Comics.com. Have an eBay store, Facebook page, Instagram. I post covers of books that I pick up here and there. So follow me on any of those sites that you use.
And Dan Brown, Ad Detective 651, and here at the store on Saturday.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.